Firstly, I thought I'd better say what I mean by IP. It's not internet protocols, although that probably should be your friend as well. It's intellectual property. And a lot of us, there's quite a few things that we actually include in the definition of intellectual property. It's actually purely a legal invention. There's no social idea of intellectual property. When it comes to real property or personal property, that existed before the legal definition of it. But with intellectual property, it's purely a legal creation. There's lots of types of intellectual property. You've heard of patents and copyright and trademarks probably. You might not have heard of circuit board protection. You might not have heard of registered designs or plant variety rights. That didn't fit on my slide. Intellectual property is not an idea. For an idea to become some kind of intellectual property, it has to relate to the real world in some way. So it either has to be made in the real world or it has to be useful in the real world. I'm going to just talk quickly about the difference between three main types of intellectual property. A patent is a new invention for a process that's useful. So something that you're going to use in industrial technology. That's quite different from copyright. Copyright is, there's no common law right. Courts didn't make any law about copyright. It all comes from statute. If it doesn't exist in the statute, then you don't have a right to do it. And the main thing about copyright is that it gives the right of the creator or the author of an object or of a piece of work to prevent others from copying that work. In some circumstances, it limits control or use of that particular work. Probably my favourite bit of intellectual property is trademarks, and I think these are still particularly important. Trademarks are a badge of origin. It's just telling you who made something or who is behind those goods or services. You don't own the mark. All you can do is prevent other people from using that mark in relation to those goods or services. So if I have a trademark for the word salt, I don't own the word salt. I can just stop other people from using it in that territory in relation to those goods or services. So is IP still relevant in a digital environment where it's really easy to copy things? We don't need to protect investment to create things because it's quite cheap to create things. Is it still relevant? Hell yeah. Without IP and without these ideas, we can't stop people from doing unfair and cheating things. And if you heard Rowan's talk, we still don't like it when people cheat, when people borrow off us in a way where they pretend that the work is theirs, but also no. In some ways, IP is not relevant in the digital environment, and some aspects of intellectual property is just no longer relevant. So yeah, intellectual property can be used to prevent people misleading, telling you that, saying that something was made by them when in fact it was made by a different person, copying and pretending that they wrote the book when someone else did. But we need a real balance, otherwise we threaten a strong participatory culture. And by that, I mean, people actually need to get involved, they actually need to copy and they need to use and borrow on the ideas of other people. We all copy. Relevant law would recognise this. So by participating in our culture, we're actually borrowing from the songs, the ideas, borrowing on the code that other people write. Parrots copy. Some people just copy by absolutely repeating word for word what they've said. Other people need to take what you've said, take what you've written and actually work with it. For instance, with parody, you can be in breach of copyright when in fact, oh, I'm on to the next slide. In breach of copyright just by simply borrowing what other people have said. And the most important part of intellectual property is we need to know for sure in a digital environment who created and who's behind a particular idea. If we don't know who's behind it, we are trusting the reputation of someone, sorry, time's up. We're trusting the reputation of someone who is claiming to have created something when they in fact haven't. So it's pretty important that we still use that. Thank you.